Wisp, Chapter 7. It was dinner time. Stomachs grumbled, but food would have to wait. Soaked from the rain, Bar and Amy needed to change. Amy peeled off her coat and hung it on the back of a chair. It was far too wet to go in the closet. Her argyle sweater was damp through. Bar hung her own coat on another chair, crossed the room, and opened her closet. She pulled out a pink coat Courtney had given her. Even she had to admit it was beautiful. She took in the size. Amy was a bit taller, but it should fit her just as well. Ugh, Bar faked disgust. Courtney picked this out. It's not that bad. I kind of like it. You like it, you wear it. Bar threw the coat on Amy's bed. I can't take your clothes. Please, take it. You'd be doing me a favor. Amy stroked the soft wool. She did need a new coat. You're sure? Bar waved it off. I'll never wear it. I think it cost a bundle. Probably. Courtney doesn't buy anything unless it's expensive. Someone should wear it. Won't your stepmother be angry? I have like half a dozen coats. It won't be missed. Besides, it's pink. Everyone but Courtney gets the fact I don't like pink. But you do. You should have it. Amy immediately hung up her new treasure. She smiled, feeling the soft wool one last time before closing the closet door. By far it would be the nicest thing in her wardrobe. Seeing the pleasure her friend took in the gift, Bar smiled too. They finished changing. Bar was done first. Her book bag was on the bed. She crossed the room and sat down next to it. While Amy was distracted with her unruly hair, Bar reached in and took out the diary. Amy finished. Let's go, she said brightly. I'm not really hungry, Bar countered. I might skip it. Maybe you could just bring me back a sandwich? That thing can wait, Amy chuckled. Dinner now. Bar still didn't move. Amy crossed the room, took the diary from her grip, and placed it on her desk. She pulled Bar up from the bed and pushed her out of the room. Amy turned out the light, closed the door, and locked it. Delicious smells wafted up from the dining hall below. Bar was reminded of her hunger and forgot, at least momentarily, about the diary. She and Amy followed their noses down the stairs into the dining room. A near-deafening cacophony of adolescent chatter greeted them. Most St. Cat residents were already at dinner, and the huge dining hall was full. In a situation like this, they had their routine. Bar joined the food line. She'd get the food. Amy would look for 2 seats together. Bar could have lived at home. Her mother still stayed in the house, but Bar spent most of the school year in the dorms. The decision had been made during the divorce. There had been too much fighting. It was supposed to be a short-term fix, but once installed in a room with Amy, she'd wanted to stay. Life wasn't perfect at St. Cat. Louise and Cassandra saw to that. But even with the terrible twins, school was relatively carefree. Bar could be happy, pretend things hadn't changed. She could almost forget the divorce. Tonight there were 2 choices for dinner, pasta shell stuffed with spinach and cheese for the vegetarians, and for the more adventurous, chicken curry. Bar took an order of each. She and Amy would split the meals. Lemon meringue pie was for dessert. She grabbed 3 slices, 1 for Colin, and went looking for Amy. Finding 2 seats together had been a challenge. There was some space at the terrible twins' table, but that would have been social suicide. Sitting with the Pops would have meant spending the entire meal at the mercy of Cassandra and Louise's taunts. The only other option was at Patsy Pillinger's table. She sat alone. Social Siberia was far preferable to social suicide, and Amy claimed 2 seats across from Patsy. With no real friends, Patsy spent most of the time with her books. Not taking her eyes from the page, she shoveled pasta into her mouth. Spinach fell onto a crisp page. She took no notice of Amy sitting across the table, but when Bar sat down with an overloaded tray, she looked up and smiled a very large smile. Too large and too teethy to be attractive, but genuine, almost endearing. Hi, Bara, Patsy chirped. Her smile actually grew wider. For some reason, Patsy really liked Bara. Hey, Pats, Bara returned through a yawn. The lack of sleep from the night before was really catching up to her, and Patsy was partly to blame. Bara had woken early from her dreams and gone to bed late because of Patsy. Bar and Amy were in the room next door. It wasn't unusual to be woken up by loud banging and odd smells. They'd run next door. There'd be Patsy, loopy as all, her current roommate cowering in the corner looking for a chance to make a break for it. Uncharacteristically, Denmother had recently admitted defeat and allowed Patsy to bunk alone. But as it turned out, Patsy didn't need an audience. "What were you doing last night?" Bara asked. "Calling on the spirits of the forest." Patsy's voice easily carried to the terrible twins table, with predictable results. Pop, Entourage in tow, Cassandra and Louise stood up and sauntered over. Cassandra disliked Bara, but she hated Patsy, and because Cassandra hated Patsy, Louise detested her. "The spirits of the forest," Cassandra taunted. "Is that why you smell like a toad?" The entourage tittered. Even Bara had to admit Cassandra had a point. It wasn't that Patsy smelled bad exactly, just strange, like flowers left too long in a vase. "You know the difference between toads and spoiled princesses?" Patsy returned. "The warts are hidden on the inside." Her eyes widened and she added mockingly, "But then I can see a wart now. It's on your snout." "Oh no, don't worry. It's just a hideous zit." Cassandra's hand flew to her nose. There was a blemish, a small one, but she reacted as though it were a volcano ready to blow. She was sorely outmatched, and so Louise took over, giving Patsy, and Bara, just because, a look that would have withered an oak tree. "Let's go, Cass," Louise said. "Yeah, Lulu," Cassandra agreed, her voice muffled behind her hand. "The smell's getting to me." Louise took Cassandra's free hand. Cassandra's other hand still hid the pimple. The terrible twins and the Pops returned to their table. "Cass Banks and Lulu Bellevue. Love it," Patsy taunted as they left. "But I'm surprised you can smell anything with that on your nose." The Pops glared, promising revenge. Bar and Amy tried to ignore the threatening stares and returned to eating. "What a storm, hey?" Patsy marveled. "Do you think we'll lose power?" Anxious to get back to the diary, Bar shook her head and shoveled another forkful into her mouth. "I think the school has a backup generator," Amy reassured. "That's right," Patsy said with a mouthful of spinach. Amy looked away. "You know why they had to do that, don't you?" Bar continued to eat. Amy shook her head. "There was a girl who died." Patsy paused for another mouthful of food. "It was years ago, during a blackout." Amy and Bar didn't respond. They were kind of hoping Patsy might drop the subject. She was always telling shocking stories at the worst times. They were trying to eat and didn't feel up to a tale of blood and gore, death and mayhem. But Patsy had no sense of what was appropriate or the ability to read her audience. "Yeah," she continued on. "The girl fell down the stairs. They found her in the morning with her neck broke." Patsy let her head loll to the side and her spinach-specked tongue hung out. Bar and Amy fought not to react. Patsy shrugged. She straightened up and pushed her finished meal aside. She reached for the pie. Amy bit. "Patsy, that's not true." "Sure it is. My dad told me." Patsy's dad was Windfall's sheriff. The Pillingers weren't wealthy. Her enrollment at St. Cat was a work benefit. "The girl was in her nightgown? No one knows where she was going. Her roommate said she'd gotten out of bed and opened the window. Then she left. The roommate thought she was going to the can or something." Patsy paused to gauge reaction. She wasn't getting the response she wanted, so she added, "Spooky, hey?" Bar and Amy exchanged a knowing look. They both concluded there was only one option open to them. "I think I'll have nightmares," Bar offered. "It gives me shivers up my spine," Amy agreed. Finally satisfied, Patsy smiled and began to eat her dessert with gusto. It was a tragic choice. Just as she'd been about to heap a rather large forkful into her mouth, Louise and Cassandra, entourage in tow, passed the table. Louise made a great show of tripping. "Oops!" she said loud enough for the entire hall to hear. She fell into Patsy, sending Patsy careening into her dessert. Patsy lifted her head. She had meringue on her face, clothes, and hair. There were the clicks of a dozen or so camera phones taking focus and shooting. Her humiliation would be online in short order. "So sorry, Patsy," Louise drawled. Everyone but Amy and Bar laughed. The Pops, led by the terrible twins, exited the room, leaving Patsy to clean up the mess. Patsy didn't say anything but wiped at her face with her sleeve. Amy handed her a napkin. She and Bar were embarrassed for her, but Patsy seemed only subdued. "I'm going to get those two," she hissed. "Here, have one of these, and don't worry about the Pops. They're total jerks." Bar pushed the slice of pie in her direction. Bar and Amy, still uncomfortable, rushed through the remainder of their food. They shared a dessert and then left Patsy still eating and no doubt planning revenge. The Wisp is published on Amazon.com. Also available on Amazon is Monsters, Real and Imagined, Tragic, Frightening, and Funny, All Too Brief, a collection of short stories and poetry. Strays, a collection of short stories and philosophical love poems, and Tattoo, Calling All Soldiers Home, a collection of poems in brevity.